Nowadays, movie studios are all about franchises, tentpoles, superheroes, reboots, and spin-offs. But there's one groundbreaking movie trilogy that cemented a place in pop culture and won't be receiving a big screen remake anytime soon, at least if the original creators have anything to say about it. Released in 1985, Back to the Future put a new spin on the concept of time travel, in a DeLorean no less.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
And became an instant classic. Directed by Robert Zemeckis and co-written with Bob Gale and executive produced by Steven Spielberg, it's arguably the best movie about time travel, starting a trilogy that is hailed as a cultural touchstone. The first sequel, Back to the Future Part 2, picks up right where we left off with Marty McFly and Doc Brown. That film didn't hit theaters until 1989, with it being shot back-to-back with Part 3. The follow-up was met with mixed reviews upon release, but fans and critics now regard it as one of the best sequels of all time. Which of these masterpieces is the superior viewing experience, and which one needs to make like a tree?
Get out of here.
Note that we won't be touching on Part 3 in this video. That's a cultural divide for another day. For now, grab your hoverboard, fire up the flux capacitor, and let's see what happens when this baby hits 88 miles an hour. Face off! Disclaimer: no actual science was used to determine the outcome of Face Off. Your results may vary. Please do not consume Face Off if you are allergic to conjecture, opinion, or general nonsense. Round 1. Story. Back to the Future might contain one of the tightest scripts in all of cinema history. Beginning in 1985, the plot follows Marty McFly, a teen accidentally sent back to 1955 in a time-traveling DeLorean built by his eccentric scientist friend, Dr. Emmett Brown. While in the past, Marty inadvertently prevents his future parents from falling in love, threatening his own very existence, and is forced to reconcile the pair and then somehow get
Back to the future!
Eventually, Marty does make it back after a few close calls, and the film closes the chapter on this story, but leaves room for more. The sequel is much larger in scope. It starts with Marty, Doc, and Jennifer traveling from 1985 to 2015 in order to prevent Marty's son from sabotaging the McFly's family future. However, crusty old Biff from 2015 uses this opportunity to steal the DeLorean and alter history for his own gain. In order to restore the timeline, Marty and Doc must return to 1955 and stop Biff from gifting his younger self with a sports almanac that contains the results of every major sporting event from 1950 to 2000. The sequel does end on a cliffhanger, meaning it's not as complete as the first one.
Careful! You don't want to get struck by lightning!
As much as the sequel expands on the consequences of time travel, there's just something special about the original with its tight focus on Marty and his folks. For that reason, this round goes to Back to the Future.
Rock and roll.
Round 2. Humor. A lot of the original's comedy is mined from the fish-out-of-water hijinks that Marty finds himself in while stuck in 1955. There's also the entertaining meeting between Marty and 1955's Doc. And don't forget about George's encounter with Darth Vader. And there's loads of indelible character moments and amusing lines of dialogue.
Whoa, this is heavy.
There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
What?
While we do receive similar Stranger in a Strange Land gags with Marty out of his element in 2015, the sequel gets decidedly more meta in its humor.
Something very familiar about all this.
You can even view part of it as a satire about the media landscape, like the excellent gag when Marty is attacked by a hologram of a shark, an interactive advertisement for Jaws 19, directed by Max Spielberg, with the tagline, "This time it's really, really personal." It's also hysterical to watch future versions of beloved characters, with Michael J. Fox standing out in particular. The actor kills it as the 47-year-old Marty, and his son Marty McFly Jr., and Marty's daughter Marlene.
Mom? Mom, is that you?
And the low-key hilarious moment when Doc sends Part 1's Marty back to the future, only for Marty from Part 2 to race out and inform Doc that he came back, with Doc Brown fainting immediately. The comedic timing is perfect. Both films contain some great visual and verbal gags, but Part 2 seems to be a bit more on the money for our tastes.
Great flick! Great friggin' flick!
Round 3. Iconography. Each of these movies contain their own symbols and visual language that has helped secure their legacy as some of the greatest films ever. For starters, there's the stunning introduction of the time-traveling DeLorean, with the car disappearing right before slamming into Marty and Doc, only leaving fire trails behind. Then the Enchantment Under the Sea dance and everything that accompanies it, particularly Marty's lively performance of Johnny Be Good. And of course, how could we not mention that suspenseful shot of Doc hanging from the clock tower, which is foreshadowed in the opening credits. Sheer brilliance. The sequel pays homage to the original while also doing its own thing too. There's the future in all of its glory, with the hoverboards, sports almanac, and self-lacing Nikes. We're still waiting on a pair. The second half of Part 2 really plays off the imagery of the original by traveling back to 1955 to revisit standout sequences like the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, Marty and Lorraine in the car, and George laying out Biff. Of course, these are all done with a new perspective and provide an extra wrinkle to those events, but they still owe a lot to the foundation of the first one. Both movies have their memorable moments, but if you ask someone to name their favorite part, they'll most likely pick something from the original. This round goes to Back to the Future.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Round 4, Marty and Doc. There's no doubt that Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd will forever be associated with their iconic roles as Marty McFly and Dr. Emmett Brown. Something admirable about the original is that we don't ever have an explanation for how Marty and Doc became the dynamic duo we know and love. Well, in a way, we sort of do, since Marty technically meets Doc in 1955. The two characters have a fantastic rapport, and are excellent foils for each other. In Part 2, Marty seems really hung up about whenever someone calls him chicken. He will really lose his shit.
Nobody calls me chicken needles. Nobody!
While it does feel a bit out of nowhere, it encapsulates his character well. That being said, it's wonderful to have Marty team up with a Doc who feels fully in the loop on all things time travel, as opposed to Marty having to catch Part 1's Doc up to speed.
Who's president of the United States in 1985?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
The relationship between these two is at the very core of these films. It's hard to say which one really does it better, since they both showcase these characters incredibly well. So we'll call this one a draw.
What do you think?
You look great, Doc.
Round 5, Biff. Our antagonist is played by a criminally underrated Thomas F. Wilson,
McFly, your shoes untied. Don't be so gullible, McFly.
who manages to create distinct versions of the same character. That could be said for the rest of the supporting cast as well, but we love to hate that butthead Biff. In the original, we meet him as a middle-aged man bullying George and his family. Then there's the Biff of 1955, which is pretty much the same Biff, except with his hairline still intact. He keeps getting in the way of Marty's plan to make his parents fall in love, and is also just a massive pain in the ass. By the end, thanks to George's fateful punch, Biff is rendered as docile as a house elf.
Just finishing up the second coat now.
Now, Biff, don't con me.
I'm sorry, Mr. McFly. I meant I was just starting on the second coat.
In the sequel, we have twice as many Biffs running around. There's 1985 Biff, Old Biff, Biff's grandson, Griff, Tycoon Biff from alternate 1985, and 1955 Biff again. We're even treated to seeing old Biff interact with young Biff and berate his earlier self for being such a moron.
Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong.
A good amount of alternate 1985 Biff was modeled after Donald Trump with his appearance, affinity for real estate and boob jobs, and bemusing rise to power, which was all confirmed by screenwriter Bob Gale. Biff is an awfully great character in either film, but we like seeing him throw more of a wrench into the sequel. This round goes to Part 2.
Buttheads.
Round 6, Supporting Characters. The supporting cast really gets to shine in the original, as they're given a lot of depth. When we first meet Lorraine, she seems to be a depressed alcoholic with very conservative values. But once Marty travels back in time and meets her as a teen, vivacious Lorraine clearly doesn't practice what she preaches.
And he could sleep in my room.
I gotta go. I gotta go.
The same cannot be said for Marty's father, George, who seems to have been bullied all his life. Although Marty does learn an important thing about his father.
He's a peeping Tom.
Well, besides that, Marty discovers that George had the inner strength that just needed to come out under the right circumstances. In the sequel, the family takes more of a back seat as Marty and Doc scramble to undo the damage Biff has wrought upon the timeline. Leah Thompson still plays Lorraine, but Crispin Glover is regrettably removed from the proceedings due to a contract dispute. Even Jennifer, played by Elizabeth Shue, who replaced Claudia Wells, seemed to be getting an expanded role in the sequel after being whisked to the future with Marty and Doc, only for Doc to knock her unconscious and essentially sideline her.
Doc, what the hell are you doing?
She was asking too many questions and no one should know too much about their future.
In fact, she won't even wake up until the end of part 3. At least we got to see Principal Strickland wielding a shotgun. As enjoyable as the performances are in part 2, the film does not provide as emotionally rich character arcs that the original does. This round goes to Back to the Future.
My density has popped me to you.
What?
Round 7, Special Effects. While there are no superheroes, there's still plenty of action to be had in these movies. The original has remained, well, timeless, thanks to its ingenious use of special effects, mostly accomplished practically. The shots of the DeLorean traveling back in time, or the high-octane lightning storm, still hold up to this day. Of course, the first film ended with a bang and teased just what was yet to come.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
But it wouldn't be until the sequel when we would really see the DeLorean in airborne action. And for the sequel, we only have one word: hoverboards. When these bad boys hit the screen, fans went berserk. Everyone and their mother wanted a real hoverboard. Eventually, we would get something called a hoverboard, but definitely a far cry from what we really hoped for. We're also treated to more flying cars amid a futuristic hill valley, and some amazing visual effects to bring two Biffs or two Docs together within the same scene. As incredible as both films' special effects are, the sequel just hits the gas a little harder. This round goes to Part 2.
You mean you have to use your hands? That's like a baby's toy.
Baby's toy.
Round 8, Time Travel. It's kinda weird to think that all Back to the Future movies are now technically set in the past.
Great Scott!
Here's the thing about the original too. If you give people a title like Back to the Future, those people are probably going to expect to see the future. Yes, we all know that the original cleverly uses the title to treat the present of 1985 as the future that Marty needs to get back to. But it does give the film more of a period piece vibe than a sci-fi one. However, it is cool to see how things have changed once Marty returns to the present. Even the mall sign has changed from Twin Pines to Lone Pine, thanks to Marty's run-in with Old Man Peabody's farm.
You space bastard! You killed our pan!
Gotta love that attention to detail. In Part 2, we actually get to see the future, and boy does it deliver. Right out the gate, we have flying cars before heading over to futuristic downtown Hill Valley. There's so much eye candy to behold and cool gadgets like a self-drying jacket. Even the scenes in alternate 1985 with Biff being a major player are prescient. Hell, we even have characters meeting different versions of themselves. Some are more cautious, like Doc Brown, to make sure the very fabric of the space-time continuum isn't obliterated. Others, like Biff, just waltz right up to their past selves and directly get to the point. The sequel really scratches the time travel shenanigans itch more so than the original. Plus, it pretty much predicted the Chicago Cubs winning the 2016 World Series. Sure, in the movie they won in 2015, but that's close enough.
Why do we have to cut these things so damn close?
This round goes to Part 2. Final verdict. After a narrow battle through space and time, we've come to the final judgment, which sees the sequel, Back to the Future Part 2, as the winner. It wasn't easy, but hey, at least you can't call us chicken.
Nobody calls me chicken.
Let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment in the comments, and thanks for watching.
See you in the future.
You mean the past?
Exactly.